with another episode on my Saturday mornings talking about leadership. Welcome to anybody who is joining me right now, or you can watch this on replay on my LinkedIn profile or my YouTube channel. So a friend of mine recently talked about, and so did a couple of colleagues speak about the transition between leadership, management and leadership, and how tough that is. So I've been doing leadership, bit about me. I've been doing leadership, particularly in the not-for-profit sector, civil society for 33 years now. So a lot of my experiences come from leading in the voluntary sector, in organizations that are working with communities, vulnerable groups, and just generally in the UK, lots of 3 different London boroughs I've worked in. So I decided that I'm going to do this every Saturday to share some of my tips, what works for me as a female Asian woman who's chosen to do leadership. I've grown up believing, and like maybe many of you, that leadership is a lonely role and a lonely space. But life or profession taught me, rather, a lot of reflection played a big role in this. But life has taught me that leadership, yes, is a lonely position because of the elements of responsibility and accountability. However, it doesn't have to be. And especially if you're trying to lead a community. So community leadership, I would say, is not your bog standard working in the corporate sector or statutory services. Community leadership is a lot more challenging. And because I do community leadership, and I like to think that I'm very passionate about it, I like to also believe that women are naturally designed in some ways, because of the various roles they play in their personal life. They are professionally quite equipped to be leaders, especially leaders that lead in their community, especially at a time like this where we feel leadership needs to change. We're not happy with the traditional forms of leadership that sometimes feels like there's a huge disalignment between the service users, the communities we work with, as opposed to the decision makers who are quite far removed from the services. So I am going to be coming here every Saturday just talking about community leadership, sharing some of my tips. I hope that you find it useful. If there are any questions that you would like me to address or anything you want me to talk about or share, please do leave a comment on either my LinkedIn beneath this live session, or you can also engage with my YouTube channel, which you'll be able to find a link to as well. So just to cover, the last 3 episodes, I've been talking about managing strategically, because there's a real understanding that when you go from management to leadership, which happens very commonly in the voluntary sector, we get promoted from manager to leader or a senior position, but often don't receive the right support, the mentoring, the coaching, and the training to become leaders. And I think the hardest part is that transition stage where a lot of storming happens, and you may want to do things really fast, but actually it's best to slow down. And I feel that in all of that, a lot of people do not emphasize or understand the need for thinking. So in my last 3 episodes, I covered how to manage strategically in terms of your own leadership journey. But I feel like today I want to delve into and focus on thinking. Probably what I have to say is going to be very different to other people's experiences as community leaders, but I'm sharing my experience and I'm sharing my tips in the hope that it will help you to step up and lead your community. Because I feel strongly, in the absence of leadership, there will be chaos. And quite often, I've worked in communities where I have seen a real lack of leadership. And I do understand that there are all sorts of feelings around the dynamics of, or the power dynamics around the role of leadership. So I want to be able to have an impact on changing that a little bit through what I have to share. So 5 reasons, according to me, why thinking is critical to leadership. And the first thing I would say, and I won't be a surprise to you, is probably decision making. The decision making is very important to leading. And obviously, one of the biggest problems in decision making is often we're told that you can either be very slow at decision making or you can be quite fast at making the decision, which means you are at risk of disengaging everyone else. The reason why thinking allows us to do better decision making is because there will always be so many different angles to consider. And I'm not suggesting that you think, and you don't make the decision. That's another danger as well. I would say avoid that. However, I think there's a real value in thinking before making decisions. And that could sometimes, in our sector, when you're leading in the voluntary sector, it can be hard because we're so operational and our focus is on delivery that we don't actually make time for thinking. And so therefore, sometimes we can make bad decisions because we've had to make the decisions very quickly. And also, it doesn't allow us to communicate with others who might understand a different angle or a different perspective to the situation. I know in my safeguarding roles or whenever I've been responsible for safeguarding, it's always been important for me to take a little bit of time to think, to ask the right questions, and take some time to think about what's really going on before I have to make a hard decision. I'm not afraid of making a decision. I don't think those people who take forever to make a decision is a different story. And I think in those cases, sometimes the emotions get in the way and the dynamics of the people that are making the decision is more of a hindering factor than the individual. So I think for that reason, thinking is critical to decision making, because you really do need to think and you need to make time for thinking. So one way I do this, for example, is I make the time to speak to the right people. I also allocate time in every day of my week to make sure I have some time for thinking. And whether that's personal or professional, it's just a habit that I have developed over the years. Maybe because I made decisions that I regretted afterwards, that I realized the power of thinking. And how that could have like a positive impact on my decision making. So that's number one reason why thinking is critical for people who lead in their communities. The second critical reason for thinking is improving engagement. So when I say improving engagement, I mean when we think, we can also think about who else may have information, who else needs to be informed, and we can also bring them in the fold. And then what that leads to is better engagement, but also improved communication. And it means also that other people feel that they are worthy to be asked, and their views and their thoughts are just as worthy or as useful, helpful, valuable. Using lots of words here. They're all designed to be positive, in the sense that you could always make a decision on your own, and without the benefit of thinking through, you might not realize that actually there's a power, especially in the when you're leading in the community, to make decisions collectively. And when you make time, perhaps as a group or even as an individual, you can then enable collective decision making. Collective decision making does not happen otherwise very quickly unless you make the time. And that again is the reason why it's critical. Another reason why thinking is critical, and that engagement plays a big role in that. And the third reason is to understand our qualities. So if we do not make time to think, we don't realize in a new situation. Many of us might be very confident in our strengths, be very clear about what our strengths are. But you could end up in a new situation. You're in a new leadership role. You really need to know your own strengths. So that is a really critical, good reason. Knowing your quality is important. Thinking is very important for that reason, because when you take the time to think about it, you know the strength you bring to the table. You will know when you put your hand up and nominate yourself for a particular task or role, because you know what your strengths are and you know what you bring to that table. And every table is going to be different, and you may bring different strengths to different tables. And equally, as a group, when you're thinking when you're thinking as a group, that's when you discover everyone else's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then collectively, you can discover the strength that you have or the qualities that you bring to that group. So that's another reason why, my third reason why thinking is critical, so that you can identify your qualities, your strengths. The fourth reason is linked to the third reason. It's to identify pitfalls. When you make the time to think, you will also identify where your gaps are, where your possible threats are. And then when you're able to do that, you are in a better position to lead strategically. So you know where your gaps are, you'll know how to fill them in. If you don't know, you're none the wiser. It's really hard to make improvement and develop your own leadership as well as the leadership of a group that you're leading. So this is the fourth reason why thinking is critical. And the last one I want to talk about is thinking forces us to understand the bigger picture, which was my last 3 episodes, all around the bigger picture and managing strategically. Thinking is critical to understanding the bigger picture. And when I say that, I mean like knowing, for example, that I've had the time to think about and knowing what else is going on, like who else is doing this kind of work, or who else is actually could join and fill the gaps that I currently hold as a leader or my leadership group holds. Then makes us understand what we need to do to fill those gaps. And then it allows us to be strategic. So, okay, so how do we move forward? So that fifth reason why leadership, thinking in community leadership is critical is because it actually makes us stop and forces us to think about the bigger picture, what's missing, what needs to be filled, and how do we move forward strategically. So it's a huge enabler to helping us plan the future and move forward. So that's all I wanted to cover in terms of thinking. It's absolutely crucial. I have my book here where I not only make the time daily to think, but also write my thoughts down. And I know that people I have mentored over the years, I have always encouraged and empowered them. My number one tip to thinking or to leading, it's about making notes, because it's very easy to have a thought come through our mind, and in our busyness of a very fast moving environment, community leadership, you may forget a great idea or a solution that you thought of. So another great tip that I have, that I use, is my phone. So I use notes on my phone. And for anyone who's not using it yet, Otter is a great app that is helpful to also record things. So I have found myself in vehicles with family members where a thought has suddenly come to my mind, and I have said to my daughter or my son or whoever's with me, quickly, give me my phone, and I might record it on Otter. And it means then I have that piece of information, which, as you know, thoughts come and go. You want to make sure you don't lose those really enlightening and important thoughts that come in the most unusual times. But that's just like managing thoughts on a regular basis. Thinking, however, and making time for thinking is something else. I think it's very important for leaders to actually demand time and thinking time. I mean, in the charity sector, a great way to do this is via away days and development opportunities where people come together as a group. It's very hard to progress as a group when time is not made for thinking. And thinking also enables us to bond as a group and understand each other so much better. In the absence of not knowing all our strengths and weaknesses, it's really hard to think of how we can move forward, and also really hard to know like what we have around the table. People have untold potential. Sometimes in my sector, sometimes there are people that are leading, have never had any feedback. Or perhaps the kind of management they have had has been very different to what they aspire to or what they feel inspired by. So therefore, it's really difficult to get to that point where you feel, I know all my strengths and I know what I bring to the table. It's identifying strength. There are a number of strengths finder models or tools that you will find. The Clifton Strength Finder is one of them. Some people I know look at the Myers-Briggs test as well, and there's the Carl Jung colors test, and there's several leadership analysis strength finders. But I think when you're working in a group and you do what I do, community leadership, it's very, very helpful that not only do you think alone, but you think as a group collectively. So that enables democratic decision making, but also a shared understanding, shared ownership, collective decision making, and also everyone feels like they have an element of autonomy, because that's what we're trying to do in the community leadership world. We are trying to fight the injustice or the uneven power dynamics in our community and in our society. I hope that everything I've said has been useful. If it hasn't, if there's anything that resonates or I've been able to inspire you to step up and lead your community, I'd love to know. Please do engage through feedback on my YouTube channel or my LinkedIn. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday. See you back next Saturday. Bye.